We are live. Hello, hello, hello. Oh my goodness. So excited to be here. As always got to fix one little tech thing. But once we do that, then we can get the party started, which is really exciting because today is about a book that whether you're a content creator or not, I think there's value to reading it. But definitely for those who create content, this is the book for you. You don't want to miss it. So this is the meeting for you this wonderful morning if you happen to be on this side of the world with me. And what book am I talking about? This book, Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. I think I always struggle with names. I think that's correct. But Austin, what up? We read your other book. We're reading this book for this month. It's fabulous. So with that, I think we can jump right into the deck and have some fun with each other. Alrighty. So Natasha Nurse, if you don't already know me, we'll get into more about me in a little bit. But for today's conversation, let's see what comes next. So before we get into the agenda, I was really enjoying starting with a quote, and I think we'll keep with that trend. Why not, right? So this is by Thomas Jefferson. I cannot live without books. And I like it because if you know me, you know that Nerd City is where I live and I happily reside. But books are life. I equate books with oxygen, and if we can't live without breathing, then I would argue we can't live without reading. And any form of reading doesn't have to be the traditional pick up a book kind of thing, but it could be reading audiobooks, like listening to audiobooks, or reading articles, or reading on social media. However you want to interpret reading, I think we have to have flexibility there. But generally, I think you grow when you are constantly learning. And one of the best ways to learn is from a book, from the teachings, the insights, the wisdom, the imagination, the creativity of others. So what's the moral of today? Read a book. Pick up a book and read, or an audio book, or something in between. But please keep reading. All right. And so for today, what are we going to do with this wonderful book club this morning? We're going to do meet and greet as per usual. We're going to get into the book summary, a little bit of kind of what you see on Amazon, then discussion points, which is usually my favorite part of these meetings, because that's when I get to crack open the book and read to you different passages, different things that stood out to me that I think would be really helpful in you deciding if you want to read this book, but most importantly, taking that nugget of wisdom for your life and keeping it moving. And then next steps. So meet and greet. Natasha Nurse, what do you want to know about me? Well, since we're reading another book about content creation, I thought it'd be most appropriate to pick questions that were about content creation. So without further ado, what inspired you to become a content creator? Because is it possible to be born as one? I don't know. For me, I've always been deeply attracted to media and film and books and television. And I think that exposure at a very young age helped to formulate ideology as well as preferences that I have for how I show up in the world. And content creation is anything. It could be a tweet, it could be a video, it could be a teaching moment, right? Like there's so many different ways you can display and create content. And for me, I find my ability to be most confident, my ability to shine, my ability to feel more connected to this world through content creation and also motherhood, I would say. So those are two things that have been really great. And what inspired me is, to be honest, like growing up, I always struggled with a lot of different things, being one of the few Black people in a room, being one of the bigger girls in the room, being a person who lives in a dual culture, Caribbean, Jamaican culture, and American culture, and having to explain that or navigate both cultures to whatever the circumstance or situation I was facing. And so I, growing up, always wondered what would it be like to have had a role model that resembled more or looked like me or shared a narrative similar to me. And so I think one of my driving forces outside of the personal passion and enjoyment and life that comes to me through content creation, the other flip side of that would be I want, my content to be able to hopefully inspire and resonate with girls that look like me, girls that question, can you be smart and can you be fun? Can you do this and that, right? The dichotomy that a lot of women, we grow up and we think we have to be one way. And in reality, you can be all the ways. And so, but how do you know that? How do you feel that? Well, human life is lived through representation. So when you see whatever your dreams are, then you have that internal permission to go after those dreams and dream a bigger dream. And so I hope that with the content that I create, I make people laugh, of course, because I'm goofy. I love to be silly. I can't help myself. I also love to educate. I love to help people think about something in the day. I grew up with two parents that are educators. I can't help but want to teach and help and save. So it just is who I am. But then also help young girls, especially young Black girls, know that you can be and you can say and you can show up in this world however you want to, and you can have multifaceted parts of your personality and things that you're attracted to, things that you're interested in, and just do you, and to celebrate all parts of you as a whole and just be authentically yourself. So I hope that answers the question. How do you handle negative comments or feedback on your content? So typically I would say in my journey as a content creator, most of the time the internet's been pretty nice to me. I mean, I have been bullied and I have had some negative stuff, but this year, actually, most negative comments I've received to date, actually, not through the Dresser Mate platform, but through my podcast, Woken Free. Woohoo! That I share with my husband. And it's been fascinating because I've been writing more articles around like the Black experience, just because, again, as I get older, as I grow, I lean in more and more into my Black womanhood and my narrative. And it is so interesting how even the term Black is so inciting and insightful for people. People lose their mind. When you talk about race, and I find it fascinating because I'm literally only talking on my experience as a Black woman. I would not ever presume to speak on a community that I can only share my narrative, because the Black experience is a multifaceted experience. So I cannot speak on all Black people or all women. No, I can speak on Natasha Nurse, my Black womanhood. But it is so fascinating that people are so irritated by that, the notion of just how dare someone talk about Blackness. So I've gotten quite a bit of really sick negative thoughts and comments towards me, towards my son, even threatening comments, actually, and it's been challenging. But how do I deal with it? I welcome it, because I know that the more negative comments you get, in essence, means the more people are actually paying attention to your content. So, hey, get it, girl, get it. But it's also the idea that, I refuse to allow my voice to be silenced. I refuse to allow people's hatred for Black people, for women, for feminism, for advocacy to be silenced in any way. All that does is actually fuel me to want to create more content and to dive deeper into being able to share my story, because I know it's going to help someone. And I know someone is looking for the content, because that's the beauty of life. If a thought has popped into your mind, it has probably popped into thousands of other people's minds. So it behooves of you to go out there and to do something with that, if that is your jam, and content creation is my jam. So I will always do it. I will always put myself out there, and if it pisses people off, it is what it is. That's what it's got to be. But I know that on the flip side of that, there's someone who's also grateful, someone who's also appreciative, and someone who's also curious, and someone who's also gonna take that moment to think about what I shared. So I welcome it. What are your favorite content creation tips or tricks that you've learned over time? Is to essentially keep going, keep learning, pay attention to other content creators, and keep it moving. And then what is your approach to creating content that is both educational and inspirational for your audience? So I would say it is, it's a balance between authenticity. It's a balance between joy, passion, and then also purpose. So much of what we do, we have to demonstrate purposeful living, and we need to think through like what is the objective that we're trying to achieve, and then back into that. So if the end of the day you're trying to educate someone on something, may say controversial, then we want people to be open-minded, right? So we want to not come to the space from a defensive perspective or make the person listening or watching become defensive. So how do you achieve that? Right. And so just thinking through how whatever the content, the objective is that you're trying to achieve, and then how is it going to be received? And then utilizing tools, techniques that you've seen out in the ether, and then combining it with like your own personal preferences is the best way to approach that. Got to keep it moving. Book summary. All right. So you'll find this on Amazon. Couple words. Essentially, the previous book that we read last month, Steal Like an Artist. So good. So good. And then now this month, Show Your Work. And he has more books as well. I'm hoping to either infiltrate that for the rest of this year or pop it into next year. We'll see where we sit with things. Stay tuned. But this book is really diving into thinking through generosity, and the more that you put out there and the ways that you're putting your content out there is going to demonstrate how you can be more discovered and let other people know more about the process of what you're putting together, which can be hard sometimes. A lot of times when doing content, you think through just like the end product, but what if it wasn't just that? What if content was also the end, but then beginning to the end, right? So the sitting down and like taking some notes, sitting down, watching other content, sitting down and practicing, putting it out, like, and then what if what if there's documentation around beginning to end, and then you were able to demonstrate that and put that and share that with your audience in a meaningful way? Do you think that that would touch people more? Do you think that that would be kind of get across to folks more? Probably, right? So how cool would that be? And so there's stories, there's quotes, there's illustrations, there's a lot to get into it, but it's about thinking literally the title, Show Your Work, and what does that mean for you? And what are the different ways that you could be showing your work more substantially, more holistically, more across platforms, but more for the audiences you're trying to reach and the hearts you're trying to reach. So it's a lot of good stuff there. All right, let's get into the book now. So, Be an Amateur, page 14. That's all any of us are, amateurs. We don't live long enough to be anything else. Charlie Chaplin. That's a harsh statement, but a harsh quote rather, but that's so true, right? Because so many times we think we have to be experts and like we have to know everything and we can't make a mistake and we can't have typos, and it's a reality. It happened in this presentation. It happened in other things we do, right? Like it's a reality of life. We make mistakes. It's just a reality, and it's hard. As the recovering perfectionist, I struggle with it, but we gotta move through. On page 15, he goes on to say, we're all terrified of being revealed as amateurs, but in fact, today it is the amateur, the enthusiast, who pursues her work in the spirit of love. In French, the word means lava. Regardless of the potential for fame, money, or career, who often has the advantage over the professional because they have little to lose. Amateurs are willing to try anything and share the results. They take chances, experiment, and follow their whims. Sometimes in the process of doing things in an unprofessional way, they make new discoveries. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, said Zen monk Shunryu Suzuki. In the expert's mind, there are few. Amateurs are not afraid to make mistakes or look ridiculous in public. They're in love, so they don't hesitate to do work that others think of as silly or just plain stupid. The stupidest possible creative act is still a creative act, writes Clay Shirky in his book Cognitive Surplus. On the spectrum of creative work, the difference between mediocre and the good is vast. Mediocrity is, however, still on the spectrum. You can move from mediocre to good in increments. The real gap is between doing nothing and doing something. Amateurs know that contributing something is better than contributing nothing. So, moral of the story, done is better than perfect. Something is better than nothing. Be an amateur, lean into that, try new things. Every time you try a new thing, you are in that amateur space. And that's where you're probably going to have a discovery of passion, where you're going to have a new following and a new opportunity. So yes to that. Find your voice on page 21. We're always being told, find your voice. When I was younger, I never really knew what this meant. I used to worry a lot about voice, wondering if I had my own. But now I realize that the only way to find your voice is to use it. It's hardwired, built into you. Talk about the things you love, your voice will follow. Love that. For me, I have leaned into the fact that like my natural nature is to be a little bit of a sailor mouth. And yay, pray for my son. And also to just like talk a lot of jokes and to be funny and to be silly. And when I started in the journey of just like public speaking as a whole, I think a lot of that I was afraid to show because I equated that with being unprofessional. But as I leaned into the process of like talking more and trying to resonate more, I realized that's the stuff that people want. That's the stuff that makes people also kind of let down their guard, let down that wall and let them feel more comfortable. Because if I'm silly, you're sillier too. If I want to say a cuss word, I'm sure you're thinking it too. So, we got to just kind of lean into who we are and stop trying to put out a facade of what we think we should be. We should be who we are, because that's what's going to resonate most with people. Right? So with that, let's get into the next one, page 31. If you aren't already seeing, there's such great value in this book that I think it would be impossible for you not to want to get it. So go to dressingroommate.com to get it. Think process, not product. It's like he has it as a big, like, each chapter has their own little like blackout pages and he puts it nice and big. I'm not sure if you could see that, but I hope you can. So he shares a quote on page 32 just to think through the process a little bit more behind here, which is, a lot of people are so used to just seeing the outcome of work, they never see the side of the work you go through to produce the outcome. Michael Jackson. So what can you think about with this? It's not just the end product. I mentioned this earlier, but it's also thinking through the process of getting from the beginning to the end. So when we look at documentaries, for instance, do we only see the end for, say, artists of when they're performing at the show? No, they include all that footage of them practicing, them struggling, them talking through with a loved one, with a mentor. All of that is content. All of that is meaningful connection points to your audience. So when we think about the content you're creating, and it's going to be different depending upon the type of content creator you are, what's the process that you could be documenting and sharing to help people understand how you arrived at the magnificent outcome and end that you have? Please share that. Page 45 next. All right. So share something small every day. I read this and it really was helpful for me about nearly 50 days ago. I started a series through the Woken Free platform with my husband, our podcast, where I do a Woken Free word of the day. And I get on camera and I talk about a word that is, on topic of mind for me. And, I read this and this helped I think this and another video I was watching that helped me kind of be like, okay, I got to just do this. Because I've been wanting to do a content series like that for a while, but negative voices. Oh, I don't have the time. I don't have the energy, all of the excuses, right? All of that stuff. And just kind of put that to the side and then just did it and just jumped on it. And first day I had to do it, was definitely not in the mood to do it. I was tired. My voice, I think, was like cracky. Like it was bad, but I did it nonetheless. And I'm many, many days, nearly 50 days out, I think, from that. And it's been really fun. And it's been really like reflective moments that I try to impart from not just myself, but for anyone who watches and pays attention to it. And it's good. And I've been having fun with it. I hope for those watching and enjoying are also like right there with me on that. But yeah, just share something small every day. It doesn't, when we think about content, sometimes we get so caught up on this like grandiose, like, oh, I've got to create a course or I've got to do this campaign. Or we just start with a tweet, right? Or we could just start with like a small blog post. We could start with a podcast episode. We could start with a learning bite, right? It doesn't always have to be this like big, magnificent thing, because sometimes when we make our goals too big, they are so big that we don't accomplish them because we're so caught up on the perfection of what that should look like, what it needs to be, instead of just saying, you know what are you trying to achieve? I'm trying to achieve ongoing conversation. Okay. Well, ongoing conversation can show up in a lot of different ways. So, what's the easiest path to accomplishing that? Right. And then as you work on that, you can keep moving forward and you can keep making it bigger and more grandiose if that's what you'd like. But just start with something small every day. I like that encouragement. I was like, listen, who you telling? Like this is reality. Page 54. This one was Hootenanny. 90% of everything is crap. The same is true of our own work. The trouble is we don't always know what's good and what sucks. That's why it's important to get things in front of others and see how they react. Sometimes you don't always know what you've got, says artist Wayne White. It really does need a little social chemistry to make it show itself to you sometimes. Don't say you don't have enough time. We're all busy, but we all get 24 hours a day. People often ask me, how do you find the time for all this? And I answer, I look for it. You find time the same place you find spare change, in the nooks and crannies. You find it in the cracks between the big stuff, your commute, your lunch break, the few hours after your kids go to bed. You might have to miss an episode of your favorite TV show. You might have to miss an hour of sleep, but you can find the time if you look for it. I like to work while the world is sleeping and share while the world is at work. Of course, don't let sharing your work take precedence over actually doing your work. If you're having a hard time balancing the two, just set a timer for 30 minutes. Once the timer goes off, kick yourself off the internet and get back to work. One day at a time. It sounds so simple. It actually is simple, but it isn't easy. It requires incredible support and fastidious structuring, by Russell Brand. Is that not everything? Like, that in and of itself is reason to read this book. That in and of itself is to look at your whole life and shift stuff all around to get it together. Get it together. Like, that's what that said to me. Go ahead and get it together. And that your stuff, most of it's going to be garbage, trash, straight trash. Cool. Welcome it. Bring it on. And do more, right? But it's so true. And it cracked me up when I read that, because it's so funny. As a creator, you're making stuff, and like sometimes I make things and I'm like, oh, I think people are gonna love it, and it's like womp womp womp, like Charlie Brown all the way. And then other things I'm like, oh, this, I don't think this is good, and people are like, yes, honey. And it's like, huh. So that social experiment reference, it's so true. Like, until you get it out there, you're not going to know what people think about it. Because guess what? You cannot read a mind unless you are a mind reader and that's your spiel or spiff thing that you do. Good for you. But I bet you're still going to be wrong. So do your stuff. Welcome the crap. Keep going past the crap. Keep doing more and just do it. I love that. I thought that was so funny. I am, like I told you, I'm a nerd, right? So when I read books, I literally will like chuckle to myself. I'm like, what? And then sometimes, usually I'm like, Khalil, I tell my husband, like, oh, you got to check this out. Or I post about pages on social and stuff like that. Like, I think reading is such a fun experience. It kicks me, just tickles my goat. So I'm not sure if you can see this, but there's a chart on page 60 that it's a chart that helps you think through, should I share this? Like, is it useful or interesting? And then I just really think it's really helpful. So essentially the gist of the chart is, a lot of times you think through, should I share this? Next kind of train of thought should be, is it useful or interesting? If it is useful or interesting, share it. If it's not, he recommends tossing it. And then he says, if you don't know, save it for later. And I like that recommendation too, because I've seen that on social where people say like draft dumps, right? And they think they thought they weren't sure if they were going to use it, and they ended up using it later. And that's okay, right? Also, when we create content, it doesn't always have to be for the now, the here and the now. Always remember that, like, as long as you have life and air in your lungs and ability to do something, you can also do something later, and it's a balance, because you don't want to keep pushing and procrastinating things for later, because you might not have later, to be honest. But at the end of the day, go with your gut on, like, is this useful? Is this interesting? Go with it. And if you're not sure, then again, we can archive and then just make reflective times in your week to think through, what is the content dump I could do now. Page 78. I'm not sure if we're going to hit all of this. No guilty pleasures. I think there's a quote maybe that I wanted to share there. Yeah. So by Dave Grohl. I don't believe in guilty pleasures. If you effing like something, like it. So the point of the day is, you are who you are. You like what you like. You're into whatever you're into. And People may or may not get that. That's cool. That's awesome. Do you, right? So there's that. Page 110. Teach what you know. Hello. So, I know about reading. So thus I will always be doing a book club. That's my jam. That's my passion. That's my love. But no, really. And when you're thinking about content creation, a lot of times I have been asked by people I've coached or worked with, like, what do you create content with? What do you like? What are you passionate about? What do you know? There you go. All of that. Do that. He has in big letters on the page. You want hearts, not eyeballs. Stop worrying about how many people follow you online and start worrying about the quality of people who follow you. Don't waste your time reading articles about how to get more followers. Don't waste time following people online just because you think it'll get you somewhere. Don't talk to people you don't want to talk to. And don't talk about stuff you don't want to talk about. If you want followers, be someone worth following. That part. Let me read that one more time to you. If you want followers, be someone worth following. I know that's right. Donald Barthelme supposedly said to one of his students, have you tried making yourself a more interesting person? This seems like a really mean thing to say unless you think of the word interesting the way writer Lawrence Weschler does. For him, to be interesting is to be curious and attentive and to practice the continual projection of interest. To put it more simply, if you want to be interesting, you have to be interested. That part. Like, so many gems in this book. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous how good of a book it is. It's like, it's sinful, really. It's just so delicious and wonderful. And if I ever got the privilege and the honor to meet Austin, I would just tell him just how much I appreciate his words of wisdom. And, it really has just helped to provide that support and that need, because you may or may not have a lot of creators in your network, but as a creator, you still have to keep going. You still have to get motivated to keep doing your thing. And content like this is everything. And so last page that we'll cover for today, page 182, don't quit your show. Every career is full of ups and downs. And just like with stories, when you're in the middle of living out your life and career, you don't know whether you're up or down or what's about to happen next. If you want a happy ending, actor Orson Welles wrote, that depends, of course, on where you stop your story. Author F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote, there are no second acts in American life. But if you look around, you'll notice that not only are there second acts, there are third, fourth, and even fifth ones. If you're reading the obituaries every morning, by now you already know this. Life isn't over until it's over, right? Until you don't have breath in your lungs anymore. You have an opportunity to do something magnificent, to do something meaningful for you that hopefully in turn will make this world a better place. Don't ever quit on you. Don't ever quit on your dreams. Don't ever quit on what you're trying to accomplish, because it's that day that you think you're like, I can't do it anymore. Day after is where everything like, woo, right? Just shining star. So read this book. Read it now. Please, por favor, read the book. So with that, we have a couple of things left, and then we're going to end our program. Next steps, we are reading the late, great, my number one inspiration in life, outside of my son and the deep people that move my soul, is Maya Angelou. One of my greatest regret, and I don't believe in living with regret, is that I never got to thank her. If I talk about her too much, I'll just start to cry. I love Maya Angelou. She is a vibe. She is a movement. She was more than a human. She was everything. So we're reading her for June because Juneteenth, woohoo! Represent and support and be happy about freedom at last. But because of that, I always like to choose an author of, the Black experience to be able to impart some good stuff for us. And I started my writing career as a poet. My first thing I've had published was a poem that I wrote. So I always like to go back to my roots. So we're going to read Maya Angelou poems. You better be here or be square. So obviously just be here. And if you haven't joined the book club, please do so at dressingyourmate.com. Please also subscribe to the blog, subscribe to the newsletter. I do monthly newsletters. You haven't missed out yet. So please, 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 this has been fun. Now we're going to stop sharing and we're going to say goodbye. So I'm not sure if I have any comments missed out, but I was doing this on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube. So Your girl was a lot of different places. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being here. And I know I'll see you next month. So this will be amazing. I'll see you soon. Have a great day.